I have bad news and I have good news. Good news first. In regards to the HDR Black Level floor, Borderlands 4 is reacting or showing the exact same result as Borderlands 3. Bad news. In regards to the HDR specular highlights or maximum peak brightness and specular highlights, Borderlands 4 is also reacting and showing the exact same result as Borderlands 3. Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about the basics first. First of all, I have just tested the PlayStation 5 version, but in regards to HDR, I'm pretty sure there is no difference between Xbox, PC and PlayStation 5. But again, keep that in mind, because if there are some differences, please let me know in the comment section. And second of all, and this counts for the PlayStation 5 because I have tested it here, but again, I'm pretty sure the same counts for the Xbox and PC. There is no HDR system level calibration support. Where is it? Here, adjust HDR. This setting here or this menu whatsoever has no impact whatsoever in the game. That means you can set up here whatever you like. It will not affect the HDR presentation in the game. But of course, as always, I recommend to follow the instruction on the screen or watch my videos on how to set up this menu on the PlayStation 5, Xbox or PC to get the best result if a game supports this setting. Okay, so let's talk about the HDR settings, what we have in a game, and here we are. Those are the settings, or this is the setting because that's the only setting what we get, okay? That's not a bad thing in theory, okay, if everything else is working. But anyway, let me explain what we're seeing here. We're seeing exactly the same HDR setting menu as in Borderlands 3. The weird thing was, and maybe you can confirm this, but when I started the game for the very first time, I had here instead maximum 1000, as you can see here right now. That's the maximum 1000, and it's 1000 nits, by the way. I had 1500 nits there, and I can prove it. And I never got this value back. I did a very big mistake because when I had 1500 nits staying here, I actually changed it because I was thinking I can increase it or decrease it, but it jumped immediately to 1000. So I'm not even sure if I would get 1500 nits in specular highlights if I wouldn't touch it. Anyway, that's the bad news, because the maximum peak brightness in this game is really limited to 1000 nits. And now 1000 nits nowadays is not enough anymore, because even the G4, which is not the latest LG OLED TV, has already a 1500 nits display, and right now that's the maximum, that's absolute the maximum what you get in specular highlights. And again, it's not enough. They just copied and pasted actually the HDR settings, the HDR implementation from Borderlands 3, which wasn't that bad, don't get me wrong. But we're talking about Borderlands 3, which was released a couple of years ago, and therefore it was not a big issue when we just had 1000 nits. But nowadays, I would like to see more. And if you don't believe me, if my TV can now display here 500 nits more, the impact is much better, okay? But right now, unfortunately, it's limited to maximum 1000 nits. A little bit more, because I think because of the aliasing or whatever, it's not quite exactly 1000 nits, but you get the point. That's not enough anymore, and I would just wish that we get a future patch where we can increase the maximum peak brightness in specular highlights. But now let's talk about the good news. The HDR Black Level floor is, if the game requires it, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Right now, even we have 0.0, but this is because of the HUD symbols. But I can show you something, because the game engine can clearly display 0 nits, and we can see this here right now. This is just great in terms of contrast. We get a superb contrast if the game requires it. Sometimes, unfortunately, the game looks a little bit washed out, but this is done on creators or by creators' intent. There's nothing we can do about, and I would not recommend to change any settings on your screen to actually mitigate the washed out look, because if you have a picture like this then here, where we have really great HDR Black Level floor and nice specular highlights. Unfortunately, just 1000 nits, but you get my point. This is a great contrast. If you would now change some settings on your TV, like the FTDA settings on the LG OLED TV, or maybe brightness or shadow details on different TVs or on your monitor, you will lose some details at some point when the game actually displays 0 nits, like here at the moment. This is absolutely fantastic in terms of contrast. Here, when we're moving a little bit further, the game starts to look a little bit washed out. But this again is done on creators' intent. There's not much what we can do. I would just wish that we have a much higher maximum peak brightness, because with a much higher maximum peak brightness and a perfect HDR Black Level floor, the contrast, the dynamic range would be even better. Okay, my friends, so what is now my recommendation in regards to the best HDR settings in Borderlands 4? And honestly, there is not much to recommend, because again, we literally have just one setting here, the HDR maximum peak brightness setting, and maximum setting is 1000 nits. So unless you have an LG ZX, then I would just recommend use 1000 nits. So even on the LG G4, you have to use the maximum, but it is not perfect, because you miss out, or I miss out, 500 nits. And believe me, that's a big difference, having 1000 nits or 1500 nits specular brightness, because, or specular, maximum peak brightness and specular highlights, because the dynamic range would be much higher, and it's easily to see on a TV like that. Okay, so anyway, that's the only complaint what I have actually, because the rest is pretty good. We have a very great HDR Black Level floor, as I have shown you, and this is almost more important than having perfect specular highlights or a maximum peak brightness in specular highlights, because a bad HDR Black Level floor ruins the whole picture. Missing out a little bit peak brightness and specular highlights, yeah, it's not great, but it is not as much bad as having a bad HDR Black Level floor. Okay, so that's the only downside what I have seen so far. And I do like the game. I mean, hey, the graphic style is absolutely perfect. So far, I have experienced maybe a couple of stuttering, so a little bit, you know what I mean? So nothing of a big problem, okay? And I have at the moment VRR actually disabled to make a proper recording here. So at the moment, I do like it. I hope we get different levels where we have a little bit more popping colors like this one. If you remember Borderlands 3, there was actually a lot of popping colors like this, you know, and I really do like it, okay? But that's still the very beginning of the game, so I'm looking forward to play more. Leave me a comment and tell me actually what you think about this game, what you think about the HDR implementation in this game, and yeah, let me also know if there is any difference between Xbox, PC and PlayStation 5. Thank you very much for watching me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.